Okay then, let's give this a try. Talking into a camera in the attic. Like all the filthy casual YouTubers that I can't stand. Okay, so there's a game that I like to play sometimes where I imagine that my house is, so to speak, the Pompeii of 2,000 years in the future. That is, my property happens to be the best preserved example of my entire civilization, Canadian 21st century civilization as a whole, 2,000 years down the line. Given that sort of premise, what do I think a future archaeologist would think about what he might happen to dig up in my house? So there's some sort of jokes that people make about archaeologists where archaeologist digs up something that he doesn't quite understand. Oh, it must have religious significance. I think archaeologists should probably be a little bit more nihilistic, but again, nihilism isn't fun. So there was an example of in a Scottish island, they were doing some archaeology there, and they dug up a little figurine, stone, vaguely shaped like a woman. The archaeologists were thinking, okay, it probably had religious significance. It's probably a fertility symbol, or it's an icon of some goddess or whatever. I'm sort of looking at it and thinking, it's a really crude little carved figurine with a dopey little smile. I think it's probably just some toy that some guy made for his kid because he had a day off. So I sort of imagine stuff like that. Someone finds I don't know, an Elmo doll and imagines that it was probably their god or something. Future archaeologists digging through what's left of the internet or whatever. They probably think we worship Shrek or something. I don't know. Another thing, sort of out at the back of my property, I've got a midden. So it's basically a pile where I bury bits of organic waste. So like if I got a bunch of sticks that I need to get rid of and I don't feel like burning them or whatever, just throw them in there, let them compost down, and I'll put them on my garden at some later date or whatever. If I got like fish guts or whatever, bury those out there. I also use that midden to sort of shoot into with my archery to give a sort of backstop so that I'm not losing all my arrows out in the weeds. An archaeologist digging through that, they'd find some probably interesting stuff. One of the things they'd find is a bunch of deer skulls. The majority of these deer skulls have got a hole in the top of the head. Most of the holes have been very sort of crudely made with a hacksaw. Some of them have been cut with a chisel, mostly hacksaw. Now, given our sort of memes about archaeologists, what would they think about this? Given that if this was the only thing that they knew about 21st century Canada, what would they think about these deer skulls? Well, if they didn't know anything, they might think, okay, it probably had religious significance. This region in 21st century Canada obviously followed some cult of the skull, and they were putting these holes in the deer's heads in order to let their spirits go back out into the forest and repopulate, or I don't know, something like that. An archaeologist who knew a thing or two, he might say, oh, maybe he was getting at the brains so that he could tan some deer skins. After all, there's no there's no deer skeletons here. There's just a bunch of heads. So maybe this guy was a tanner. People were giving him deer skins and giving him heads, so on, so on, so on. An archaeologist who knew a thing or two, had some practical skills, might be able to sort of piece that together semi-accurately. I had a segue, but I've forgotten it. More's the pity. So another sort of thing, digging through my house, you're going to find a lot of weird artifacts and stuff. Not artifacts. I guess they would be artifacts. You're going to find a future archaeologist digging through my place would find a bunch of weird artifacts. Namely, going through my house, digging through the ruins, and he finds a sword. And he doesn't just find one sword, he finds multiple swords. He finds a whole bunch of them. And this sword, let's see if I can find it. It's got some battle damage. You can't see it because I've ground it out, but this sword has got some battle damage. So it was evidently used. Isn't that interesting? What sort of conclusions would the future archaeologist draw from this? Well, he'd probably say, well, 21st century Canadians were evidently a very backwards and warlike people. They obviously lived in very violent times, and this fellow was clearly some sort of, I don't know, like war leader, renowned chief of his people, because he has a lot of swords, and we all know swords are expensive, prestigious items, and they're made for war, so therefore cause and effect, so and so and so and so. The point I want to make with this is that archaeology is really bad at digging up relationships. It can dig up artifacts, and it can sometimes tell how those artifacts were used, but it's pretty rare that it can dig up a human relationship to those artifacts.